Good evening and welcome to Wednesday Wellness, a free live educational series brought to you by Trinity Health. We're thrilled to have you with us as we dive into the important topic of cancer and nutrition. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping notes. Your cameras and microphones have been turned off to ensure a smooth experience. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A chat feature located at the bottom of your screen, and our presenter will address these questions at the end of the session. Lastly, today's webinar is being recorded and a link to the video will be sent to your email in the coming days. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce registered dietitian Amy Bragagnini.
Hello, everyone. Brittany, is my volume okay?
You sound fantastic.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm so happy to be here and I'm glad everyone could join me tonight. This talk, I made this talk a few years ago and I put it together mainly because I get a lot of the same questions on various diets, various types of things that people can do to not only while they're going through cancer treatment, but also to, maybe help prevent cancer and such. So I kind of wanted to summarize it all in a PowerPoint and try to answer a lot of the questions that people have. So basically the objectives today is we're going to talk about the power of nutrition in the field of cancer. I have been an oncology dietitian for 23 years, and it's really an amazing job. I love working with my patients. I love being able to share science-based information with them to help address any side effects that they're experiencing undergoing cancer treatment, but also, again, help maybe lower risk of cancer. So I'll kind of speak a little bit about what my role is in helping educate patients if they do have questions. And some of the most common nutrition misunderstandings that I have heard, and there's a lot more, does sugar feed cancer? We're going to talk a little bit about soy and soy foods as it relates to breast cancer. We'll talk a little bit about intermittent fasting and if that is something that people undergoing cancer treatment should be doing. Same thing goes with the ketogenic diet. We'll discuss juicing and the detox diets because I hear that a lot from patients. And probably the number one question I get is, should I be taking a supplement? And then we'll kind of close out with talking a little bit about the health halo. So just to give a little bit of background, I'm a board certified specialist in oncology nutrition. What that means is I have to have at least 2,000 hours in specializing in oncology nutrition. I had to be a dietitian for at least 2 years, and then I have to pass a board certified exam. And I just recertified for the 4th time. So you can do the math. I've been at this for a little while. And it was funny because when I took the test the last time, I thought it's going to be really bad if I don't pass this oncology nutrition exam after being in the business for 20 years. But luckily, everything worked out. So this is the biggest question I get. Does sugar feed cancer? And there's not really a great yes or no, okay? So we'll just talk about the basics behind it. So carbohydrates, when we eat food that is considered a carbohydrate, it breaks down in our system and turns into blood glucose. So glucose is the body's preferred fuel source. It not only fuels our healthy cells, but yes, it does provide energy to cancer cells. It is important to note, though, that in the absence of glucose, so say that we don't eat any carbohydrates and only eat protein and fat, cancer cells and healthy cells can still use protein and fat for energy, just like it would for glucose. So just to begin, I think many of us know that too much sugar is not a good thing. When we eat a diet that's very high in sugar, and you'll hear me talk a lot about sugar in general, and I think sugar's really it's kind of a naughty word these days. Basically, if we eat a diet that's very high in simple carbohydrates and sugar, that could lead us to have weight gain, and it could increase our risk of heart disease and diabetes. And most importantly, it does increase insulin and insulin-like growth hormones, okay? And that's kind of what we're going to speak a lot about. So it's important to note that cancer cells are really greedy. They multiply and grow very, very fast, maybe even a lot faster than our healthy tissues. Okay, so you can imagine then if they are being fueled by sugar, they're going to take up a lot of it. And this is just a little diagram. We know that diets that are high in sugar and simple carbohydrates, so not just a little bit, but if we're consuming a diet that starts out with a sugar-based cereal, and then you have a donut for a snack, you're drinking regular soda all day, you have a milkshake for lunch, you see where I'm going. If we're consuming a diet that is very high in simple sugar, we are going to have high glucose level, okay? When we have a high glucose level, our body releases a hormone called insulin. And so insulin basically will take that glucose into cells to have it utilized for energy. So what we know about sugar in general is if we're walking around with high blood sugar levels, that means we have a lot of insulin. Insulin and insulin-like growth factors are actually kind of they're needed in our body, but too much of them might create cell growth and division. So in a roundabout way, it's not so much that we're having a little sugar, it's the problem if we're having a lot of sugar, then we have a lot of insulin, and then it might lead to cell growth and development. So from my world, if you were to ask me, do they need to cut out all sugar? The answer is no, okay? Balance is the key. Because my day-to-day is spent with people undergoing chemotherapy, radiation therapy, people just after surgery. If they're concerned and they say, I'm going to cut out every bit of carbohydrate and sugar from their diet, and if they're subsequently struggling with low appetite, nausea, maybe some gastrointestinal issues, that's going to further limit what they get from a nutrition standpoint during treatment. And it could put them at risk for malnutrition. Plus, as I mentioned, our healthy cells really do need carbohydrates and glucose. So in order to help my patients not become malnourished, I don't want them to completely eliminate glucose or sugar necessarily. But I definitely do promote good blood sugar control, okay? So I'll give you I had a patient once who was undergoing chemotherapy, and the chemo had completely eliminated her appetite. She was not hungry, and she was losing weight pretty rapidly. And one day I was meeting with her, and she said, all I want is a milkshake. And I was going to say, okay. Her daughter said, you can't have the milkshake because it's got sugar in it, and that will cause her cancer to grow. So in that setting, that is not a situation. This poor woman hadn't eaten all day. That woman is not going to walk around with completely elevated blood sugar levels all day long. That person just wanted a milkshake. So that's why I want to educate people. You don't need to eliminate all simple carbohydrates or sugar. We want to make sure that instead of walking around with a high elevated glucose, we want to bring that number down. And how do we do that? We do it in several ways. People that can eat more fiber will have lower blood glucose levels, so increasing whole grains and nuts and seeds. Eating healthy fats and protein will also lower sugar levels. So again, encouraging people to eat lean meats, low-fat dairy products, again, beans, peanut butter. And then absolutely, I would encourage my patients to reduce their intake of added sugar. Okay. So again, I don't tell them they can never have sugar or anything sweet. I'll tell them as a whole to try to reduce the amount of simple sugars they're eating. So limit sugar-filled beverages, try to limit too much candy or desserts, kind of follow the American Heart Association's recommendation for sugar intake. And basically that is women should limit their sugar intake to around 6 teaspoons a day, which is about 24 grams of added sugar. So if you happen to I wonder how much added sugar I'm eating. One of the steps you can take is to look, if you're going to eat anything out of a package or a box, check the nutrition label. There should be a section that says added sugar and then a grams. Okay, so you'll be able to get an idea of about how much added sugar you're taking in just from that. Men should limit their added sugar intake to about 9 teaspoons a day, which is about 36 grams a day. Okay, so let's move on and talk about soy and breast cancer. So some cancers use human estrogen to grow and spread. Those are estrogen receptor positives, and it's a type of breast cancer that is sensitive to estrogen. So the example that I sometimes will talk to patients about is if you can picture all breast cells contain estrogen receptors. And when the key, which is estrogen, is inserted into the lock, which is the receptor, and turned, a series of signals are sent, which that might cause estrogen receptor positive breast cancers to grow. Okay. So why is soy a concern? Well, as you can see from the picture up top, the chemical structure of soy is somewhat similar to estrogen. So, I'll get to this part in a minute, but what you should know about soy is, again, soy contains isoflavones, which are similarly structured to estrogen. And what the controversy is if estrogen is kind of feeding estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, well, and if soy is kind of like estrogen, should we be concerned that soy isoflavones might also fuel estrogen receptor positive cancers? First thing to know is that your body's estrogen is much, much, much stronger than soy. And I like to give the example again, going back to the key and lock situation. So as I said, if you're taking the estrogen, which is the key, inserting it into the lock and turning it, you get to open your front door. Now let's pretend that soy or isoflavones, again, they look just like your key, and they might even fit into the lock. The difference is because they're not strong, they can't turn unlock the door to go in and send signals to the rest of the body. So in fact, soy fitting into that receptor might actually block estrogen from forming with that receptor. So they kind of play defense a little bit. And believe me, we've done, not personally, but lots of studies have been done looking at different aspects of epidemiological studies. And so we're also looking at a lot of lab studies and mouse studies. And many organizations, the American Cancer Society being one, says that eating soy, whether you have an estrogen receptor positive cancer or another type of cancer, or you don't have cancer at all, is considered safe. And what we know is, especially adolescents that consume a diet that is high in soy foods have a significantly lower risk of breast cancer as they get older. So what are sources of soy? And first of all, I love it because whenever I mention soy to a patient, they usually wrinkle their nose. I think soy is a tough word for some reason. I get stuck on it. I wish they could have come up with something different. But sources of soy could be soybeans, tempeh, edamame, soy milk, soy nuts, tofu. That's the other one people usually wrinkle their nose at is, I'm not going to eat tofu. It's actually quite good. So what are the recommendations? Current recommendations for consumption would be up to 2 servings a day of whole soy foods, okay? So that could be a half a cup of tofu or 1 cup of soy milk. And I did put in there limit intake of soy supplements and soy isolates. Basically, what is a soy protein isolate? Well, that's whole, say, soybean that's stripped down to just the protein component, okay? Now, I would say that not concerned, but the thing to be aware of is if you are trying to incorporate more soy in your diet, the American Cancer Society recommends whole soy foods and not necessarily overdoing it with lots of, say, soy protein isolate protein powders, okay? Because we're just not sure how many you're getting at that point. And if a patient asks me, I'm really trying to lower my risk of cancer, should I add soy? I generally don't. That's usually not my first recommendation. Generally, my first recommendation is to do a diet recall. And if I get the sense that my patient isn't eating enough fruits and vegetables, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to try to help them increase their fruits and vegetables. I'm going to have them reduce their added sugar intake. I'm going to have them make sure that they're limiting alcohol intake, maybe stopping smoking, maybe before I encourage the soy. But yes, whole soy foods can be an absolutely healthy part of the diet and might help lower risk of cancer. and this is a humble brag, I'm one of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics national spokespeople. And I was able to talk to the New York Times about soy and soy products. So, okay, here's another commonly asked question that I get in the Cancer Center. What about intermittent fasting? And what, if you're not familiar with what intermittent fasting is, it involves the consumption of little to no food for specific periods of time. So there's a couple different methods that people might do intermittent fasting. Some people will say, I'm not going to eat from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So they're going to fast during that 12-hour period. Okay. Other people might say, I'm not going to eat from 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. So people have different window lengths. Another type of intermittent fasting is for people to eat normally for 5 days out of the week, and then maybe 2 days, they might consume only about 500 calories a day. So why would people do this? Well, a lot of people are doing it for weight loss. But if someone is interested in doing this for cancer, there's some speculation that cancer cells might experience more damage when your body is fasting. And again, let's go back to our original question about glucose, high blood sugar levels, and cancer. Again, we're trying to get to a situation where we're not all walking around with super elevated glucose, okay? And if you're fasting, generally your blood sugar level isn't as high. So that might be a good thing. So they've done a lot of research on intermittent fasting and diet as it relates to cancer. They've gotten some clinical trials where they're having groups, one control group and one group doing fasting. And they found that some chemotherapeutic agents, some of the different medicines might actually work more effectively with people that are intermittent fasting. And they've done some animal studies, and one of which I can think of is the mouse that has breast cancer and that was getting radiation. If that mouse is intermittent fasting, that radiation has a better, more strong effect on killing the cancer cells. So where do I stand on it? Again, it might have some benefits. Some people, if they're trying to maybe prevent cancer, it might lead to some healthy weight loss. Again, it might help improve your insulin sensitivity, improve your fat metabolism. And again, in that example I just shared, it might help improve the effectiveness of anti-cancer treatment. Now, let's go back and say, people that are undergoing treatment for cancer sometimes have side effects that really makes eating difficult. I mean, that's really how I spend the majority of my day, is helping people get enough nutrition while they're undergoing treatment. So if somebody is intermittent fasting and during that 12 hours they can't eat, they're only left with a 12-hour window that they can. And what happens during that 12-hour window? They are not hungry and they have nausea and they do not feel like eating. So in that case, the intermittent fasting might really put them at risk for malnutrition. And when you think about it, a lot of my patients are working still. They have families. They are running around doing everything. And again, if they have only 12 hours to eat or even less, that's going to limit the amount of healthy, good nutrition they can get in their body. Okay. If somebody has diabetes, I do not want them intermittent fasting. Okay. We want to make sure that a consistent, balanced diet is consumed, just to make sure that blood sugar levels don't plummet throughout the day. And again, risk of malnutrition. And I know this might seem silly, but some of my patients have told me when they did try intermittent fasting, when they're told they can't eat, they don't. But then during the hours they can, it's no holds bar. It's kind of like, feed me. So they don't always make the healthiest choices when it comes to diet after that, the window. We'll talk a little bit about the ketogenic diet. This has been, I don't know if it's as popular today, but over the last few years, we have a lot of people doing it. So if you're not familiar, what is the ketogenic diet? Well, first, let's talk about what ketosis is. It's when the body's glucose or glycogen levels are depleted, the body breaks down fat and produces ketones for energy. Okay, so that was kind of the situation that I explained, that if in the absence of enough glucose, your body is still going to produce one of our survival mechanisms. So the ketogenic diet essentially mimics fasting. Okay, so again, when your glucose is low, the ketogenic diet is a little different in that people follow it day in and day out versus, a 12-hour fast. But what we know about the ketogenic diet when it comes to cancer is that healthy cells can use ketones for energy, but cancer cells might not be able to use the ketones as easily for energy. And right now, they've done a lot of different studies on the ketogenic diet. Some are animal-based studies, some are human-based. And one thing I always like to remind people is, and we're going to get and talk a little bit later about different studies and research that's coming out and how to kind of discern whether it's kind of legit research, or sometimes research is done on animal models, like the mouse example I provided. And I always try to remind people that translating animal studies to a study of cancer patients is challenging, because we don't want to extrapolate the information we learn if a mouse was used into saying that that's the same effect that it will have on a human. So what are the possible advantages? Again, similar maybe to intermittent fasting, there could be an improvement in body weight. There could be a reduction in insulin-like growth factors. In some cases, it has shown to possibly enhance the chemotherapy or radiation therapy to work. On the flip side, there are several disadvantages from following a very strict ketogenic diet while undergoing cancer treatment. So definitely the ketogenic diet a lot of times might not contain enough fiber, which might lead to constipation. And a lot of my patients, when they're getting chemotherapy, are also getting an antiemetic or anti-nausea medication, and that can create constipation. So if someone's getting the anti-nausea medication and also doing the ketogenic diet, that might lead to constipation. And if someone's constipated, generally they don't feel like eating. Sometimes with the ketogenic diet, people have fatigue. It might further decrease their appetite. Again, we worry about lower blood sugar levels, headaches. Again, it might lead to weight loss, which is something I do not encourage when people are actively undergoing treatment. And again, malnutrition. So, I'm a big research girl. I like it when studies come out. And at this point, I haven't seen any study that's so definitive that I want to start recommending the ketogenic diet for my patients undergoing cancer treatment. Sometimes when the studies have come out, there's not enough participants. I find many of the studies, the participants drop out early because the ketogenic diet, if you're going to do it, does take a lot of time, preparation, and preparedness and effort to make sure you're following that day in and day out. And again, if someone is trying to plan a whole ketogenic diet and they're not very hungry, again, that might limit their how much they're able to eat. Okay, let's talk about juicing and detox diets. So those two are kind of buzzwords too. A lot of my patients will ask if they should be juicing or if juicing is healthy, and many of them want to detoxify their body just to kind of make it healthier. And I always like to remind people that the best way to detox our body is simply let our body do it, because that is what our organs are for. Our kidneys, our lungs, we're constantly trying to, get rid of elements in our body that we don't need. So as far as juicing goes, juicing might be a quick way to patients. I find that if I do a diet recall on the majority of my patients getting cancer treatment, a lot of them are very low in the total fruits and vegetables per day category. So juicing might be an excellent opportunity to increase the amount of fruits and vegetables in their diet. I'm a big fan of reducing food waste too. So, the example of if you have some really overripe strawberries, certainly could juice them. And juicing might be a really good way to hydrate someone, and getting adequate hydration during treatment is important. So one of the One of the things that I think is most interesting about juicing is that it does have its merit. Okay, it might definitely be something that can provide a lot of good phytochemicals and nutrients while people are undergoing treatment. But you can certainly ask yourself, and maybe you're different than I am, but I don't feel as satisfied if I drink a glass of orange juice versus if I eat an orange. Okay, unless you have a juicer that keeps all the fiber and the pulp in there, you're going to be getting rid of it a lot of times with typical juicing devices. And basically, then you're drinking the equivalent of an orange. And I don't know about you, but for me, I like the peeling, the chewing, the savoring that way versus all of a sudden you drink your glass of juice and it's done. Somebody that might be juicing, say, bushels of different fruit and having several glasses a day, they might actually be over consuming calories. And maybe even if it's natural sugar, maybe just too much carbohydrate in that situation. So it's all about how much you're juicing and how often and then what you're juicing. Um, so if you are going to juice, what should you do more often? Well, definitely use the best ingredients. Use some of the fruits and vegetables that are highest on the antioxidant chart. And if you can, keep the fiber in that juice if possible. Again, remembering fiber helps keep our blood sugar level down. If you can, juice more vegetables than fruit. And if you also can, because I always encourage patients to get a little extra protein in their diet when they're undergoing treatment, maybe add a protein source, maybe some unsweetened yogurt, and maybe a healthy fat. What you should do less often is use juices in place of an entire meal. I did have a gentleman once about probably 10 years ago now, and he was really looking to improve his health when he was undergoing cancer treatment, which I absolutely commend. He started, though, juicing carrots, and I didn't know how much he was juicing, but it turns out he was juicing something like 10 bushels of carrots a day. Well, I met with him later and his hands were orange. So overdoing it by mega dosing, which we'll talk about from the supplement section, various fruits and vegetables will likely deliver just a lot of various vitamins and minerals. And when it reaches a real high point, sometimes your liver has to try to filter it out. And that's where the vitamin A built up in his system. I don't recommend juicing for weight loss by any means. And if, again, back to my carrot gentleman, he was looking to improve his health, so he started with juicing. I would have probably encouraged him to let's look at the rest of his whole food and what he was eating to make some positive changes there. So supplements in cancer care. This is probably the number one question I get from people is, should I be supplementing? Certainly, just to point it out, the best source of vitamins and minerals and nutrients are from foods and beverages. That does not mean that I am against supplements. That just means that, again, some people want to, they want to kind of skip the tweaking their diet a little bit and they want to kind of get healthy by adding supplements. And really, again, I always say when people are looking to play an active role in their own care, I commend them. That is super important. And yes, supplements might play a role in improving someone's health undergoing treatment. So sometimes supplements are absolutely needed. If your doctor has ever told you that you have a certain vitamin or mineral deficiency, or you're allergic to various things. If someone is following a certain type of, say, vegan diet, they might need to supplement vitamin B12. And certainly during different life stages, women in their menopausal years definitely need more calcium and vitamin D. And someone maybe looking to become pregnant should supplement folic acid, or folate. So where are my concerns when it comes to supplements? So, and many times, just like again with my poor carrot gentleman, many people feel like if a little is good, then more is better. Okay. And that is a lot of my concern when people are undergoing treatment. And I usually explain it like this. We have lots of studies that say that when a doctor recommends a certain chemotherapy regimen, we have a lot of information that says that this chemotherapy regimen is likely going to do some good in your body. The information we don't have is if someone is taking handfuls of individual diet supplements during the day. What is that going to do to your body's processing? What is it going to do to your liver? What is it going to do to all the other things in your body? There's a concern that it might get in the way of various cancer treatments working if you are mega dosing various vitamins and minerals. Okay. Also, I think that sometimes we get wooed into taking supplements again because we think that will help us get healthy. Or we might have seen, I don't know, an Instagram influencer that says, you should be taking this and this. And I have the link on my page says you can buy said supplements for the cheap price of $60 a bottle, right? So I'm always cautious when it comes to people kind of going out on their own and just taking various things without doing the proper research, without talking to your doctor, without running it by a dietitian. Again, it's not necessarily going to harm you, but again, I want to make sure that if you are getting a certain type of chemotherapy agent, that various types of herbs or supplements aren't contraindicated in that case. Okay. And if you are looking if you've heard from your favorite influencer that various herbal supplements are healthy, there's a few places you can go to kind of do the legwork to determine if maybe that is the case, right? So Natural Medicine Database is a good one, theconsumerlab.com. My personal favorite is the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's About Herbs app. It's very quick. It's A through Z. And if your favorite influencer told you you should be taking turkey tail every day, you can just hit the T and you can look up what the supplement is. And it has information about what kind of research is done on the supplement, when you should not take it, and whether or not it is going to be maybe beneficial for you. So the health halo effect, not many people really know the health halo, but they'll know the situation. So what is the health halo? It's a perception that a particular food is good for you, even when there's little to no evidence that confirms it's true, right? Now, personal story, I fell victim to this in the 80s. And many of you might be able to remember when we had some cardiovascular research studies come out and everyone was terrified of saturated fat. So all these products started being released that were all low fat or fat free. Now, I was just a young kid and I really didn't know. I thought fat free, okay. And I kind of associated the word fat as bad. So I one day ate an entire box of Snack Walls cookies because they were healthy. They were fat free. So you see that I fell victim of the health halo. When you are swayed by what the marketer, the manufacturer is trying to sell you. So if you think about it, a gluten-free cookie is still a cookie. Now that scenario, if someone does have celiac disease or has some intolerances to gluten, then absolutely, I think that would be an option. But I don't want someone going and saying, I had 3 cookies, but they were gluten-free, and think that is going to be beneficial or not going to introduce a lot of extra sugar or simple carbohydrates in your diet. Another example, my father called me a couple years ago when he was grocery shopping, which he does sometimes, and I love it. And he was buying ice cream. He had 2 containers of ice cream in his hand, and he said, Amy, which one should I get? Should I get one that's fat-free? Or should I get the no sugar added? Which one's healthier? And I said, which one do you like the taste of better? He said, neither one. They both taste like crap. And so you kind of see my point. Sometimes I think having a little bit of something that is just the regular type of whatever you like is really good. I think a lot of times what people will do is they'll say, well, this doesn't have any added sugar, so I'll eat it, and maybe not be as satisfied if they would have just had the real thing. So just a few more slides. Communicating nutrition research. Since I am one of the spokespeople of the Academy, my job is to help if new research studies are coming out or things on the news. I need to help kind of figure out and be able to explain what this study really means and whether it's statistically appropriate for you to follow these recommendations. So a lot of things that I do is I first see who funded the study. Was it an academic institution? Was it a food and beverage industry study? It's very important that we kind of know. Now, I know a lot of people have said to me, well, this study came out, but it was funded by the National Beef Association. So obviously they're going to skew the results. If it's a legit study, and there are definite, if you can read it as a researcher going through and looking at the amount of people used in the study, how they collected their evidence, what statistics they used to find the results, that can be just as legit as a generic, company doing a study like that. Okay. But also it's important to know, was the study a human study or was it done on animals like we talked about? And trying to figure out what type of study is important. And definitely your healthcare provider and certainly a registered dietitian can help kind of weed through some of that information. Again, dietitians are experts at in communicating science-based nutrition information. This was a quote that I took the next part from one of one of the dietitians I idolize. It was from a podcast. She said, "We need to help put sensationalized research findings and exaggerated claims for products, services, or ideas into perspective." Okay, and that is part of our job. I know a lot of times my spouse will come home and she will say, "My favorite Instagram influencer said I should be doing this or said I should be doing that." And, I just always have to then ask, okay, did that influencer have any research? Did she have science backing? Is she getting paid for what she's saying? There's a lot of information out there. And again, we can help kind of dig through and figure out if there's merit to it or not. Because again, there's very few absolute or universal truths in nutrition science, right? And even fewer guarantees. And it's always important to remember that we don't all or always have the same access to healthier food choices. Again, just to make sure that again we're speaking to all types of people in all specific situations. So how do I deliver an oncology nutrition message? I remember and I know that fear is a driving force. When my father was diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago, I've been in this business for a while and I was terrified. And of course, do anything you can to help and to probably and maybe improve the diet or improve his lifestyle. So in that regard, information that you're going to utilize should be practical and not sensational. Always be wary if anybody is trying to sell you a magic pill or a magic potion. It's not legit and it's not based on science. Okay. And also remember, try not to get your information from Dr. Google. Okay. Now I'm not saying there isn't really good information out there on the internet, but there's a lot of not so good information on the internet. So always make sure that you're reaching out to a healthcare provider, especially a registered dietitian, if you're coming across questions when it comes to these kinds of things. And again, there's no quick fixes. Even in patients that don't have a cancer diagnosis, many people say that I want to get from where I am today to where I want to be in 2 weeks. Can you get me there? Well, then a lot of them take on these really kind of out there nutrition plans, or they'll cut corners, or they'll make some drastic changes in their day to day. And 99.9% of the time, they might achieve a few goals over that 2 week period that are not sustainable because they haven't learned how to implement healthy practices into their day to day life. Healthy diet education can support reducing risk of cancer, and really, again, healthy nutrition information isn't going to necessarily offer a guarantee, but will certainly help reduce your risk of cancer. So what's my philosophy? Well, education, I love excess and moderation. That's always my favorite. I do not label food as good or bad. I know that when people start to demonize or make certain foods illegal, they're really kind of increasing the shoulds and shouldn'ts of what we do day to day food wise. Now, yes, if someone has a raging peanut allergy, then yeah, peanuts are bad. But we really know that obtaining the right balance of nutrients in our bodies comes from choosing a variety of different types of foods. And there is room for your favorite foods out there. I think definitely having the idea of, the majority of the time, your day-to-day diet should be filled with lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of fiber, lean meats, and not a lot of added sugar. But that doesn't mean that you can't have your favorite sweet treat and really savor it and enjoy it every once in a while. The hair on my neck stands up when I hear words like my chiropractor suggested that I eat, or Dr. Oz said, and nothing against chiropractors or Dr. Oz, okay? But a lot of my patients will come to my office saying that they're receiving nutrition information from people other than the certified nutrition experts, which is registered dietitian. And again, you've heard me, this is a word I use every day. And these are my animals. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. That was wonderful. We are going to transition into our question and answer portion of the presentation. As a reminder, if you do have a question for Amy, you can use the Q&A chat feature located at the bottom of your screen. It kind of looks like a little box with a question mark in it. We do already have a few questions that have come in, and Amy, I would be happy to get us started with those. Couple related to supplements. First one is there a specific brand of vitamin or supplement that you would recommend over others in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm asked this a lot. I don't have a specific brand that I like better than the other. One thing that I didn't mention, and again, I'm very happy about your question, is the supplement industry isn't regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. Okay, that's always something to remember. That when you put it into perspective, a few years ago, they did a mass study where all the supplements were taken off of the shelf at, say, Target. And each of them was studied to see, does it really contain what it contains? So if it says it's got 200 milligrams of calcium, does it? They found that a lot of the supplements didn't contain what they said they contained. And some of them even contained fillers and other things like that. So my recommendation, if you are looking for a supplement that is kind of more, I guess, legit is the word, look on the label and see if there's a UPC symbol. What that means is that company took an extra step to say, all right, here's my bottle of calcium. I'm going to send this off to a third-party lab. Please test it. Let us know if it contains what it contains. And if that third-party lab says yes, they get a stamp of approval. It's just one more way to kind of show the consumer that these supplements are they contain what they say they contain.
Thank you. This next question is actually one I can kind of tag team with you. It is asking if we can go back to the slide that had the website resources for the herbs and different things. For that specific question, we can actually include those websites in a portion of our email that people will receive after the presentation. But if you're able to go back to that slide at all, just so they can quick write them down, that would be great.
I knew you were going to say that. And you know how ill-equipped I am. Oh, there we go. Let me just go. I'll go. Oh, silly. I really should be more literate. I have the slideshow in front of me printed out. Can I read them?
I think that would be great because again, we'll also include it in the email. That would be wonderful though.
Perfect. I will. Okay. So we've got Natural Medicine Database and consumerlab.com. And then the one that I like the most is the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. That is a mouthful. You can just type in your Google browser, MSKCC, and then the next word is about herbs, and that'll get you right to the site.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. With the potential pros and cons of intermittent fasting, does it really come down to which type of cancer someone has?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Across the board, I wish there was an across the board. Like all the research is telling us that people that have colon cancer should follow a 12-hour intermittent fast and they will have better outcomes. So I suspect one day if we continue to study intermittent fasting more and more and more, we might be able to say, here, if you have this specific cancer, then you should be intermittent fasting. Now, the trouble with that is that we have lots of different, well, first of all, lots of different types of cancer. We also have lots of different stages of cancer. We have lots of different treatments for cancer. So is it that if somebody has colon cancer and they're getting 5-FU, they're getting forget it, you know what I mean, 5-FU and oxaliplatin, maybe that would be a good thing. But what if they're getting another agent? So I guess my point is there's so many things that are kind of all over the board as far as variability in cancer. There's also differences in age and overall health of the patient. So it's hard to kind of suss out after research if, I wish we could limit it to, okay, if you're between 40 and 50 and you have this type of cancer and it's stage 1, then intermittent fast. But what happens if you're 60 and you have a stage 3? Should you then intermittent fast? It's really nuanced and complicated. I hope that is a fair answer.
I think so. Thank you. All right, next one. In your experience, how can a plant-based whole foods diet help in prevention, treatment, and/or avoiding a reoccurrence of various forms of cancer?
All of the above. I mean, we have lots of good research that moving more towards a plant-based diet will do a number of things. It will possibly help reduce systemic inflammation in our bodies. And, having a chronic inflammatory situation in our bodies might increase risk of cancer. So an anti-inflammatory standpoint. Moving more towards a plant-based diet might actually help reduce circulating insulin, also might help reduce extra adipose tissue, so fat that we store, which also then can help reduce estrogen in our bodies. Plant-based diets, well, so basically, so we do know from the World Health Institute that people that eat X amount of red meat or processed meat have an absolute higher risk of colorectal cancer. So again, more of a plant-based diet can reduce risk of colorectal cancer. How else? So many different ways. It's basically, and when you think about plant-based foods, they're just a myriad of all these beautiful nutrients that they all can work in our bodies. And really, plant-based foods are our microbiome, and there's a lot of buzzword around our gut health these days. And we are really finding a lot of good information where if we can feed our body and our gut lots of good fiber, lots of good prebiotic foods, probiotic foods, then we're going to have a healthy and robust microbiome. And that also might help reduce total body inflammation, helps keep us regular, and so on.
All right, next question. What would you recommend for nutrition/care after you are in remission?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I guess it would depend. So it doesn't depend. Let me start over. So sometimes when patients are done receiving cancer treatment, there can sometimes be lingering side effects that might make eating difficult. So for example, some of my head and neck cancer patients, when they finish their radiation therapy, they might have lingering taste changes, dry mouth, maybe difficulty swallowing for a long time. So my recommendations for that person, if they're in remission, may be a little bit different for maybe somebody that is in remission from breast cancer treatment. Overall, I would recommend that, again, kind of like the last question, moving more towards a plant-based diet if you can, trying to make sure that you're getting a lot of your protein from lean sources, again, leaner meats, but also nuts and whole grains and seeds and beans especially. Also making sure, I think across the board in any kind of remission, again, limiting your foods with added sugar. obviously getting enough fruits and vegetables from your plant-based diet is really important too, but also doing things for your body. I find it interesting. So many people ask me about diet, obviously, but then physical activity is another really important part of reducing inflammation in our body, helping manage and balance hormones, preserving our lean body mass, which can really optimize our metabolism. So making sure you're getting some type of physical activity. And I am a big fan of physical activity that you really enjoy, and not forcing yourself to go sit on the treadmill for 2 hours, especially if you hate it. Getting enough sleep. I mean, it's one of the biggest things to help kind of overall our brain function and everything. So I hope, yeah, that's basically my answer for that one.
Thank you so much. We actually have a couple questions that are related to plant-based diet. So I think you've answered several of them. But another one that's along the same lines is, how do you ensure enough protein if you're using a plant-based diet?
How do you get enough protein?
Yes.
Yeah. So it does. It's a little bit harder. And it takes a little bit more planning and preparation if you're following a plant-based diet. It doesn't mean eliminate meat or animal products. So just keep that in mind. Now, if somebody is a vegan, then definitely they will have to make sure that every time they eat, there are really good lean protein source, not lean, but just protein sources at those meals. So certainly incorporating a variety of beans is going to be a really important thing. Also whole grains like quinoa. I'm a huge fan. It's got an excellent complete protein. Pistachios are a complete protein. So are soybeans. Soybeans and all soy products are complete protein. So, what I would probably do is just maybe check out the vegetarian resources group for recipes. That's usually the thing that people say is, I want to eat more plant-based foods, but my spouse only eats red meat and potatoes. Certainly checking out some different recipes that incorporate a variety of different, not only beans and whole grains, but nuts and seeds, and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Sticking with that theme, what is better, eating uncooked or cooked plants?
It's a great question too. So it depends. There's never an easy answer. So I guess, in certain situations, broccoli in its raw state is phenomenal. Okay. Now, steaming it is a pretty phenomenal way to make it. If you boil the broccoli in a bunch of water, unless you're drinking that boiled water afterwards, you're going to miss a lot of the vitamins and minerals are going to leach out of it. However, in some situations, so let's take the carrots. Cooking carrots can actually help with the, I'll call it bioavailability, but the amount of the vitamins in the carrots we absorb, our bodies absorb, gets higher if the carrots are cooked versus eaten raw. With tomatoes, sometimes cooking tomatoes and adding a little bit of healthy fat like olive oil, that's going to help our bodies pull in more of the nutrients. So there's really not one right or wrong way. So I just mentioned broccoli. Broccoli is, I think, one of the best foods out there. Now, I will not eat it raw, but I love it cooked. So whatever way you find that you like fruits and vegetables, if you like it cooked, if you like it steamed, or if you like it raw, that is the way to get it. And don't forget about the beauty of frozen and canned foods too. Not all people, unfortunately, have access to fresh produce, and maybe all they have are canned various products. Still eat them. Okay, just eat them in a way, obviously, that you enjoy.
Thanks so much, Amy. We have a couple more that I'm going to try to get to before our time is up. This next one is probably one that maybe would need to be answered more specifically. It's a little bit personal, but it's also submitted by an anonymous attendee. So it might be one that we need to answer afterward. So if you submitted this question, you may need to submit it without an anonymous. It says, my wife was just diagnosed with a cancerous growth on her pancreas and will be undergoing chemo in the near term to shrink the tumor prior to excision. What would be the best food to eat/avoid to help the chemo be effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm sorry you're going through this. I would definitely encourage that your wife consume adequate protein, plain and simple, making sure that every time she eats, there's a good protein source involved in that meal. Okay. I would, just like I've said before, I would have her limit, not eliminate, limit foods with added sugar. But I want to say this early on. If your wife does start undergoing the chemotherapy or the treatment process, and like I mentioned, if she starts to lose her appetite, if she's consistently losing weight or muscle mass, don't put any further restrictions on what she should be eating. I would definitely get savvy about making really good smoothies with a protein source, maybe with some vegetables and fruits, maybe throwing in a little chia seed for fiber and protein. Many times I find my patients undergoing treatment aren't that hungry. They don't want to eat food, but they can drink things like a smoothie a lot easier. So protein, obviously fruits and vegetables and whole grains. I would probably say protein's probably the most important nutrient, and obviously staying hydrated too.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that one. All right, I think we might be able to squeeze in one last one, and it does say, what about antioxidants and what to do to improve immune system? What
Yep.
food should be a focus?
Yeah. So there's a diet can certainly support our immune system. And I always try to remind people, anybody that is undergoing, say chemotherapy, and if that chemotherapy is lowering their certain, white blood cells, there's no foods that are going to boost those white blood cells. However, eating a diet that is, again, plant-based, adequate fruits and vegetables, at least 5 a day minimum from a fruit and vegetable category standpoint, is a really good start to getting the antioxidants you need. Some of the various specific fruits and vegetables have been highlighted. Certainly the berry group has a ton of antioxidants. Um, Apples are another big one from the antioxidant group. Again, you heard me say broccoli, but the cruciferous vegetables, so Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, that kind of thing, are really, really good as well, from an antioxidant group. But there's really no there's getting adequate fruits and vegetables is really going to be the best way. Now, again, not overdoing it and making sure you're getting enough protein as well.
All right, well, thank you so much. There are a few other questions that are in the chat, and we will try to answer those via email afterwards because we are at time for the evening. So thank you so much, Amy, for your wonderful presentation and your insightful Q&A. To all our participants, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope everyone has a great rest of their evening and a wonderful week. Thank you again.
Thank you.